my fellow Americans.
Let's talk about the situation at the border. We've seen a huge surge in migrants crossing the border since January. The number of children in custody higher than it was than its 2019 peak during the Trump administration. Your colleague Veronica Escobar of Texas called the conditions there unacceptable. She was there on Friday. Is she right? What more must be done?
Actually, the facts are these. There are more children, about 600-700 more children, unaccompanied children, coming over the border. This is a humanitarian challenge to all of us. What the administration has inherited is a broken system at the border, and they are working to correct that in the children's interest. I'm so pleased that the president, as a temporary measure, has sent FEMA to the border in order to help facilitate the children going from one 72-hour issue into where they are cared for as they are transferred into family homes or homes that are safe for them to be.
And I have to confess, I knew nothing about their suffering until 2021, when I volunteered to help the Biden administration with the crisis at the southern border. As part of Operation Artemis, I was deployed to the Pomona Fairplex Emergency Intake Site in California to help HHS, Office of Refugee Resettlement, reunite children with sponsors in the United States. I thought I was going to help place children in loving homes. Instead, I discovered that children are being trafficked through a sophisticated network that begins with recruiting in home country, smuggling to the U.S. border, and ends when ORR delivers a child to a sponsor. Some sponsors are criminals and traffickers and members of transnational criminal organizations. Some sponsors view children as commodities and assets to be used for earning income. This is why we are witnessing an explosion of labor trafficking. Now, whether it's intentional or not, it could be argued that the United States government has become the middleman in a large-scale, multi-billion-dollar child trafficking operation that is run by bad actors seeking to profit off of the lives of children.
Russia said once they take Ukraine, Poland and the Baltics are next. Those are NATO countries. That puts America at war. This is about preventing war. It's always been about preventing war. My husband is a combat veteran. He's deployed now. The last thing I want him or any of his military brothers and sisters to do is to go to war.
But I think it is time to give the Ukrainians more help hitting these bases inside Russia.
One of the reasons that the administration has hesitated is because they believe it will escalate things even further with Russia pull the U.S. further in. Why not? Why do you think that's a good idea?
Because it's Russia that has escalated this war. Russia has learned how to pull its forces back out of the range where we have allowed Ukraine to use our weapons and get our support.
American media outlets have spoken to scores of people from Ukraine, and they've done scores of interviews with Ukrainian President Zelensky. We ourselves have put in a request for an interview with Zelensky. We hope he accepts. But the interviews he's already done in the United States are not traditional interviews. They are fawning pep sessions specifically designed to amplify Zelensky's demand that the U.S. enter more deeply into a war in Eastern Europe and pay for it. That is not journalism. It is government propaganda. Propaganda of the ugliest kind, the kind that kills people. At the same time, our politicians and media outlets have been doing this, promoting a foreign leader like he's a new consumer brand. Not a single Western journalist has bothered to interview the president of the other country involved in this conflict, Vladimir Putin. Most Americans have no idea why Putin invaded Ukraine or what his goals are now. They've never heard his voice. That's wrong. Americans have a right to know all they can about a war they're implicated in, and we have the right to tell them about it because we are Americans too.
The idea that we're going to send in offensive equipment and have planes and tanks and trains going in with American pilots and American crews, just understand, and don't kid yourself, no matter what you all say, that's called World War III.
A U.S. official has confirmed to CBS News President Biden has given authorization for Kyiv to use U.S.-supplied long-range weapons to strike deep into Russian territory.
I'm sitting here with my father. I will make certain that between the man sitting next to me and every person he knows and my ability to forever hold a grudge, that you will regret not following my direction. I am sitting here waiting for the call with my father. Sounds like a shakedown, doesn't it, Director?
I'm not going to get into commenting on that.
You seem deeply uncurious about it, don't you? Almost suspiciously uncurious. Are you protecting the Bidens?
Absolutely not. The FBI does not and has no interest in
You won't answer the question about whether or not that's a shakedown, and everybody knows why you won't answer it. Because to the millions of people who will see this, they know it is. And your inability to acknowledge that is deeply revealing about you.
British police came into the embassy and arrested.
After a long flight from the UK, Julian Assange's day began on the island of Saipan, a tiny territory chosen because it's the closest US court to Australia. This normally quiet courthouse, swarming with reporters, as the WikiLeaks founder arrived flanked by former Prime Minister Kevin Rudd.
Individual used an AR-15 in order to act out his assassination attempt. An AR-15 has a range of about 400 to 600 yards. My question, why is the Secret Service protective perimeter shorter than one of the most popular semi-automatic weapons in the United States?
There are a number of weapons out there with a number of ranges. Again, an advance was completed. The determination of the perimeter, I'm not going to speak to specifics, but there are a number of factors that are taken into account when we determine our perimeter. Some of it has to do with terrain, some of it has to do with buildings, some of it has to do with assets and resources that are available.
What I'm hearing is that a perimeter was not established outdoors in an outdoor venue that would prevent an AR-15, which is one of the most common weapons used in mass shootings, from being able to be within the range of Secret Service protection.
Have you provided all audio and video recordings in your possession to this committee, as we asked on July 15th, yes or no?
I would have to get back to you.
That is a no. You're full of shit today. You're just being completely dishonest.
So what is the threat to democracy? People on both sides, people in power, saying out loud that they want to control what you get to hear and see. It is real, it is a threat, and it is happening and growing. And I'll tell you what, punishing thought is on the agenda. And I just heard it from someone who's not a kook, not Alex Jones, not Tucker Carlson, one of the most sober and intelligent politicians of our time, Hillary Rodham Clinton.
I think it's important to indict the Russians, just as Mueller indicted a lot of Russians who were engaged in direct election interference and boosting Trump back in 2016. But I also think there are Americans who are engaged in this kind of propaganda. And whether they should be civilly or even in some cases criminally charged is something that would be a better deterrent.
Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg admitted that the Biden administration repeatedly pressured Meta to censor content, including information about Hunter Biden, and Zuck admitted that he also regrets complying with these demands. In a letter to the House Judiciary Committee Chairman, Representative Jim Jordan, Zuck writes, quote, "The FBI warned us about a potential Russian disinformation operation about the Biden family and Burisma in the lead up to the 2020 election. That fall, when we saw a New York Post story reporting on Joe Biden's family, we sent that story to fact checkers for review and temporarily demoted it."
You know, you do some tweets that seem to be, or at least give support to some who would call others conspiracy theories.
Well, yes, but I mean, honestly, you know, some of these conspiracy theories have turned out to be true.
Which ones?
Well, like the Hunter Biden laptop.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am in awe of Ms. Jankowicz. When the department picked her, did it know that she had said that Mr. Hunter Biden's laptop is Russian disinformation? Did it know that she had vouched for the veracity of the Steele dossier?
Senator, let me repeat myself and add an additional fact. One, we do not discuss internal hiring processes.
I think you've got no idea what disinformation is, and I don't think the government's capable of it. Do you know who the greatest propagator of disinformation in the history of the world is? The U.S. government. Think of all the debates and disputes we've had over the last 50 years in our country. We work them out by debating them. We don't work them out by the government being the arbiter. I don't want you guardrails. I want you to have nothing to do with speech.
To be a conspiracy theorist is to have been right all along, despite the efforts of the paid-for liars. And it's also to be demonstrably well ahead of the gullible, still believing in smoke and mirrors. Conspiracy theorist was first used by the CIA to shut down those who doubted the official line about the murder of John F. Kennedy, that fishy old tale about a lone shooter and a magic bullet, and then that lone shooter being shot by another lone shooter before he could talk. That was in the 1960s, and from then, the label conspiracy theorist worked for decades as the means to make thinking people too scared to speak when they smelt a rat. Let 2024 be the year of clearing out the rubbish, the trash, the long overdue year when the past or sell-by-date labels, conspiracy theorist among them, are cast into the dustbin of history.
Hey there, welcome to Redacted. This is Thursday. This is our last live show of the week. But hey, do you feel like the news is breaking at breakneck pace? Well, that's because that's the new normal, according to JD Vance. We're just going to keep getting rapid fire news like this, so get used to it. My rabbit heart can barely take it.
And hey, everyone, I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natalie Morris. This is the show where we break down the news the mainstream media largely ignores.
That's right. Hey, coming up on today's show, we're going to talk about the USA closure and the freak out from Democrats. Democrats are moving towards impeachment proceedings again against Donald Trump, in addition to Elon Musk. They're saying, who elected Elon Musk? So Congresswoman Nancy Mace is going to join us here in just a few moments to talk about that.
We're also going to continue to talk about the blowback from Trump's proposal that we own Gaza and renovate it. Guess what reports are now that his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, is involved. I know you're shocked.
Yeah.
We're also going to talk about how USAID has been paying for child trafficking. We have been covering this. It should not be a surprise to you, but Ryan Mata has been on this story, and he's going to stay with it as well.
That's right.
So
also, we're going to talk about, we have the state attorney general from South Carolina is going to be joining us because you thought Dr. Fauci was out of the woods with that Biden pardon. Not so fast. The states are now looking into Dr. Fauci. So we're going to get to all of that and more on the show today. Welcome in. Let us know where you're joining us from. Nice to see all of you guys here. And welcome in. Yeah, just let us know. We're streaming live on Rumble, streaming live on X, and YouTube as well.
It feels like that we are live every Monday through Thursday at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. And it feels like the next time we see you live, who knows what's going to happen because the news is coming so rapid fire. So make sure you stick with us on the newsletter at redacted.inc because we send you as much information as we can about that. And we keep content over the weekend as well because, news is just breaking. And, we thought like Drain the Swamp would be maybe like last time, little bits and pieces, but more it's like a deluge. It's like Niagara Falls, the Drain the Swamp. That's what's happening.
Oh, I'm reminded we're also streaming live on Twitch. Yeah, we just started that a few weeks ago. So good to see all of our Twitch users as well. Welcome in.
Well, without further ado, we're going to bring in Nancy Mace to tell you about why the Democrats are freaking out about things they supposedly value. Before we do that,
indeed. I want to tell you, we were like, before we launched our Shopify store, we were like kids wandering around in the desert without water because, you couldn't really get good storefront set up. It was really difficult to get all of your designs in one place and handle all of that. And now we run everything on Shopify. If you want to start your own store, you can do the very same thing. So here's our Redacted store at redactedstore.com, and it's powered by Shopify. And I'm telling you what, if you want to upgrade your business and get the same checkout we use with Shopify, it's super simple to do. It's very simple to do. You can have your website up and running in just like 5 minutes. You can add designs anytime you want. You have the back-end payment system. So if you've got a design or an idea for something to launch in your life and you want to do it, you should do it with Shopify. We use it every day. And it's fantastic when you want to think about getting your business off the ground. Think big businesses like Allbirds and Skims. There's lots of great big businesses that use Shopify and are all powered by that. So right now, if you want to check it out and grow everything you need to grow your business, go to shopify.com/redacted. Sign up for a 1-month trial period today. Again, that's shopify.com/redacted. Sign up for a 1-month trial period today.
Well, Democrats are freaking out about all the corruption that we are learning about has been funded through our tax dollars, including funding these ludicrous projects, paying the media inordinate amounts of money. Now, just before the show, Representative Nancy Mace joined us to discuss how crazy it is right now on Capitol Hill with Democrats not sure what they even stand for. I thought they stood for transparency, but I guess they don't. As long as they're standing against President Trump, I guess, that's just fine. But what's going on? What are they calling for? Watch what she had to say. So tell me about the Democrats' absolute freak out about government transparency, because I thought that was something that they valued.
Well, right. Democrats campaigned on transparency, accountability, and, quote, saving democracy. And we saw on the oversight hearing yesterday, screaming about Elon Musk and all these things, who's literally doing the work for the federal government. Elon, one hand doing that with Donald Trump. And, they're such hypocrites because, George Soros's son being involved, like, they're okay with that, right? That their involvement with federal and state and local governments. But heaven forbid, God forbid, we expose USAID as running a global news cartel. We expose the amount of money that's being wasted. We expose the corruption. We take away certain individuals in the intel community who've leaked state secrets. I mean, we're doing all the things we were tasked to do. And Elon and Trump have shown that what USAID is doing, this is basically communism. You're taking taxpayer money and you're funding propaganda. And he's exposing all of it. And I just can't be any more grateful than I am today.
Right. So yesterday, JD Vance said this sort of rapid fire news feed is our new normal. We're going to continue to feel like this, like that too, that. I almost feel like it serves a purpose, because if Democrats were just able to justify one thing at a time, like they bent over backwards yesterday saying that the Politico contributions for their pro account is normal and it's fine because Politico had just built out this robust pro service and the government needed it. So they had time to craft that before they're hit with something else. Sesame Street, New York Times. And so do you think that for your constituents, this is serving a purpose to show corruption because it needs to be dumped on us like an anvil?
Yeah, absolutely. And we need as much of it as possible. In fact, I'm doing a hearing this afternoon in just a few hours on oversight, exposing the over $10 million the federal government has wasted making animals trans. Like, why are we doing this? The amount of waste. And so American people need it. People are being red pilled, especially the left, and Democrats are being red pilled. And that's better for our party. That means that we're getting through, the message is getting through, and people are getting angry, and they're going to join us in arms. They're going to join us in pursuit of the truth, because that's what the American people want. It's what they deserve. That was their mandate in November.
Now, I want to tell you a little story. One of my first stories that I covered as a broadcast journalist was the social network that candidate Barack Obama had launched in order to facilitate full government transparency. Now, not only was he sort of an outsider, even though he was a senator, he was new, he was inexperienced, and he used the internet for the tenets of full transparency. Do Democrats forget that that was something that they championed? Is it just full-on Trump derangement syndrome? We can't see it because it comes through a vessel we don't like.
Oh, no, it's full-on TDS. It's a cancer to them. It's malignant, and they cannot get over it. I mean, we aren't hiding anything. We aren't corrupt. We're just exposing the corruption. And take Elon Musk, for example, which, by the way, bringing up Politico, their latest article says that polling finds Elon Musk unpopular. I'm sure it was bought and paid for by USAID, right? And so... but, looking at it, this is information. This is just, here's the information, you digest it, and then you can make a decision. We're not like putting a spin on it. I mean, some of us are because it's just so crazy, but it's just, you can take the information, you can see it for yourself. You can see where the dollars are going. You can see how crazy this is. And then look at the reaction of the left. Look at Chuck Schumer. Look at Hakeem Jeffries. Look at all of them literally just falling apart, having meltdowns in public, real tears here. And why they're doing this, because it's not putting our country first, it's not putting our safety first, it's not for national security. In fact, they are jeopardizing our nation's security. And so we've got to fix it. And so thank God for Donald Trump. I think there's so many more people part of the MAGA movement. Thank God for Elon Musk. And he spent his whole weekend volunteering last weekend, just looking at fraudulent treasury payments, looking at USAID, and just telling the American people the truth. We deserve it. And Congress deserves it. This is information that I don't have. I don't have enough manpower or staff to uncover what he's been able to do for us. And we should all be extremely grateful.
I also thought that the Democrats are a party of respecting other cultures. But we see through these State Department funded programs that what we've been spending our time and money on is bossing around other cultures and telling them how they need to think and how they need to be, and they need to be more like us. Why can't Democrats actually speak out against that now?
Yeah, it's mission impossible. And also our taxpayer dollars have been spent censoring information in other countries and promoting propaganda in other countries through USAID, but also through some of the big tech companies that are out there that we are all on. And that are begging for Donald Trump for relevance right now. These things have been happening, and they won't take responsibility for it, which is why Republicans are going to continue to crush it because we're telling the truth. And thank goodness, like Doge came along. Now X is the media, not USAID. And we're putting an end to this. And I hope we go hard in the paint. I hope we go harder than ever before, exposing this and then shutting it down. A 90-day pause for USAID is not enough. Burn the thing to the ground, shut it down, no more. No one will miss it.
I'm also very thrown by this sort of ableist message that Elon Musk has young autistic programmers helping to just parse out data. Hillary Clinton put on X, they have no relevant experience. They aren't old enough to rent a car. This is not a good thing. I thought that, again, the Democrats were the party of not enabling this ableist message that anybody with any ability was valuable. I loved that Secretary of Sean Duffy said, Madam Secretary, with all due respect, experienced Washington bureaucrats are the reason our nation's infrastructure is crumbling. So what are we supposed to make of this? They're making fun, almost, of people with different abilities when that was never their platform.
Yeah, that's 100%. And we need all the autists possible aiding and helping the federal government to expose this. I have hired individuals with autism or on the spectrum, a member of my family who's lightly on the spectrum, and I see the kind of talent and the gifted nature of these minds, the brilliance behind them, that needs to be embraced. And while they might not always fit in a 9-to-5, traditional 9-to-5 job, they are eager, they are willing, they are ready, and they have the brain power and capacity more so than you and I combined. The amount of the ability, their gifted nature, and whatever it is their subject matter expertise is, these are very gifted and talented individuals. And we could only be so lucky to have an autist on our team or in our office or at a federal agency or running Doge. These are the kind of people that can help expose it quicker, faster, better, more than the average person, and they want to, and they have so many abilities. And to give someone who is labeled with a disability the ability to serve their country in that way, it's amazing.
Yeah. I'm just so confused. Like, we're making fun of people now. I thought the Democrats didn't do that. That's what you hated on Trump for so many years.
It is perceived as a disability too. It's disgusting.
It is. One more question, because this is something that I've been personally thinking about, because April is coming up. We're going to have to file our taxes for 2024. How are we going to get Americans to do that with confidence, knowing that what we're paying for is this kind of crap? Do you think the federal government is going to have some kind of message like, we know your money was wasted. We're sorry. We're not going to do it anymore. Please file your taxes.
Well, I hope in the interim between now and April 15th or October 1st, if you file an extension, that we have no time to waste, that Doge and others, these new agency heads and secretaries and cabinet members will continue to expose what's going on, truly happening with your tax dollars at a rapid pace. That is what the American people voted on in November. That is the mandate. And they need to hear the truth, even if it's uncomfortable. And we have to get out there and make sure that everyone knows it. So they need to be on X. They need to be out there and gobbling up the information that Doge is putting out there, because it's insane. And the fact that you have members of the Democrat Party, you have leftists who want to fund these programs, trans programs, gay theater, and I voted for gay marriage. So these things in other foreign countries that have nothing to do with America, her people, or our safety, they let them double down, expose it, and give the Democrats a microphone. And I pray they keep talking, because it is their downfall. You can guarantee it.
Yeah, we're watching it in real time. Thank you so much for your time. I know you have limited time, and it's been a pleasure to speak with you on Redacted. Please come back anytime.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thanks, right. Congresswoman.
Now, how do you think the rest of us are going to feel come tax day, knowing, it's amazing to watch these. Like, I paid $2 million for Arabic Sesame Street. I feel trans operas, things
easy,
like that.
Yeah, but it's easy to get outraged about that kind of stuff, right? But I've been outraged for years that when we write our tax check, it immediately goes to the military-industrial complex.
Right.
Like, out there in the public is the fact that we spend nearly $1 trillion to bomb other countries and have 900 military bases around the world. So that, to me, was already out there. The fact that we're also now, funding trans puppet shows in Peru just is like icing on the cake for my outrage about it. So,
well, one of the things the Trump administration is doing today, in fact, Carolyn Leavitt, White House spokesperson, went to the press and said, these are the Trump administration's tax priorities. And maybe that will help us to feel a little bit better about our right now, our obligation to pay our taxes in April. No tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, renewing the 2017 tax cuts, adjust the SALT cap, eliminate all special tax breaks for billionaire sports team owners, close carried interest tax deduction loopholes, and tax cuts for American-made products. Now, think about this. This would be the largest middle-class tax cut that we had seen. The Social Security one alone is a bombshell for so many voters. So maybe that will help. I think that's something we're going to have to continue to watch.
Learning Theory says, look into Mace with the Jeremy Corbell and Immaculate Constellation story. Yeah, I think we're going to see some revelations about that next week, hopefully. I know there's the back and forth about Jeremy Corbell. It's really interesting that people get in, like UFO Twitter, and everyone gets really upset. A lot of people can't stand Jeremy Corbell. Then others think he's fantastic. Others people can't stand Stephen Greer. Then other people think he's fantastic. Like, ask any two UFO watchers, like, hey, where do you come down on any of these issues? And they're going to have disagreements on it. So we've invited the Congresswoman on to talk specifically about UFOs and related topics, and we will do that with her at some point here, hopefully after that committee hearing. So again, we'll have Congresswoman back on and we'll ask her about that. All right, we've got more news to get to here. Daniel McAdams from the Ron Paul Institute is going to be here just in a minute here. We're going to be talking about the Trump-Gaza blowback. There's a lot of moving pieces. President Trump just posting on X just a short time ago about sort of clarifying his position on the Gaza Strip. What does it mean for U.S. boots on the ground, U.S. forces there, U.S. business interests there? Senator Rand Paul is not happy about it. So we're going to talk about that in a second. But first,
speaking of taxes, we want to remind you that you can get help with your taxes, especially if you have back taxes, by having an ally on your side. That's why we want to remind you of Tax Network USA, because the IRS is the largest collection agency in the world. And of course, they are continuing to step up enforcement for 2025. So if you have any unfiled returns or owe any back taxes, consider getting an ally on your side with Tax Network USA. They can give you a free consultation, take a look at your situation, and see if they can help you, because they are not your friend. It's like any enforcement agency. You really want to have someone representing you when you go to them. So Tax Network USA has a preferred direct line to the IRS, which means they know which agents to deal with and how to deal with them and which to avoid. Tax Network USA has proven strategies designed to settle your tax problems in your favor, whether you owe $10,000 or $10 million. They have attorneys and negotiators that resolved over $1 billion in tax debt because, you don't want to pay more than you have to unless you want to pay for trans surgeries in Ethiopia or whatever we're finding right now in the USAID revelations. So call them at 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/redacted. One more time, that's tnusa.com/redacted for a free consultation.
Well, yesterday on the show, we speculated that Jared Kushner was perhaps the last person in the room before Trump met with Benjamin Netanyahu. We talked about that openly yesterday because that tends to be what Trump does. The last person to speak with him is the person who has his ear. Well, we now have confirmation of that in fact it was Jared Kushner, according to reports today and repeated in the Times of Israel, in Israeli publications, that Jared Kushner had President Trump's ear prior to his meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu, and that the remarks that he delivered basically came right from Jared Kushner. Of course, you'll recall Jared Kushner has openly talked about the redevelopment plans for Gaza and the condominium projects and everything else that he would like to put there. Well, President Trump today clarified his position. Early this morning, he posted this on Truth Social. The Gaza Strip would be turned over to the United States by Israel at the conclusion of fighting. The Palestinians, people like Chuck Schumer, would have already been resettled in far safer and more beautiful communities with new modern homes in the region. They would actually have a chance to be happy, safe, and free. The U.S., working with great development teams from all over the world, would slowly and carefully begin the construction of what would become one of the greatest and most spectacular developments of its kind on Earth. No soldiers by the United States would be needed. Stability for the region would reign. Okay, Senator Rand Paul tweeted this: "The pursuit for peace should be that of Israelis and the Palestinians. I thought we voted for America first. We have no business contemplating yet another occupation to doom our treasure and spill our soldiers' blood." So what do we make of all of this? Of course, remembering that there's massive amounts of Palestinian oil and natural gas off the coast of Gaza. Is it all about money? Is it all about oil? Is it all about natural gas? Why should the United States be in Gaza? Well, we wanted to ask Daniel McAdams. He's the executive director of the Ron Paul Institute, co-host of the Liberty Report with Ron Paul, and former senior staffer on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Daniel, welcome to the show. What do you make, first of all, of Senator Rand Paul's comments? It appears that there is quite a bit of blowback to this plan. And what do you make of the president's comments today, sort of clarifying this position?
Well, I like the way you put it, the last person in the room. You know, it almost sort of reminds me of kind of a mini Hunter Biden. You know, hey, Pops, don't forget that land deal I was talking about. You know, and here he is. I wrote it down for you. Here, it's on this card. Just read it. So don't worry about it. It's no big deal. You know, it's funny, but not funny. Who knows? Maybe it's true. I think Senator Paul captures the sentiment of Americans who put Donald Trump in office. I mean, there's no question. We've watched polls very closely. Foreign interventionism, not only in Ukraine, but also in the Middle East. There was a recent poll, I think it was an ABC News, a poll that came out saying that 53% of Americans don't want any more military aid going to either of these wars. So the sentiment is clearly there with what Senator Paul has said. But now you pointed it out yesterday on your program. There were a few odd things about it. First was the fact that he was reading this from a card, which is uncharacteristic, I think, of President Trump. He doesn't need those cards. He was trying to get certain aspects of it straight. The other part is I genuinely, even though I was shocked to hear it, I genuinely did not detect malice in his voice, even as he said something that most people would consider to be very sort of cold and heartless. We're gonna kick you out of your land. I honestly don't think he felt malice. I honestly don't think he understood the implications of what he was saying.
Right. So one of the things that I feel is that he thinks that private contractors can come in, do a renovation like any renovation project that real estate investors sort of thrive on, and that it will be better. And so I gave him this benefit of the doubt, but with the tweet this morning where he says it will be turned over to the United States by Israel at the conclusion of fighting, assumes that we are going to allow Israel to resume fighting. On what terms, though? And so it makes me think that the agreement with Benjamin Netanyahu is we're going back. We're going to do what we want. Is your read?
It does sound that way. I mean, it makes you wonder what the deal that was negotiated right as as President Trump was sworn into office. You know, it was a dramatic deal. Apparently he sent his envoy over there to say, look, we need a deal, almost Godfather-like. We need a deal. Sign this agreement. But don't worry, when the smoke clears, you're going to get something that you're not going to believe how great it is. And maybe that had something to do with it. Maybe Trump's just thinking this would be a hell of an HGTV show, you know, I mean, right. Going and renovating Gaza. But it is bizarre, the idea that somehow you can tell people that they have to leave your home. Former Representative Justin Amash made a great point yesterday as well. He said, clearing out Muslims and Christians like my cousins from Gaza where they live would be an incredible act of ethnic cleansing, and it would be completely illegal. And Americans, the last thing we need in the world, Americans, that is another lengthy occupation of another country. And I think that's why he had to. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say that's why he had to bring in his, in my opinion, very adept new press secretary who said, well, he didn't mean that we're going to send troops, and he didn't mean we're going to send any money to do it. Well, then how are you going to do it? I don't get that part.
Well, then Pete Hegseth today came out and clarified and basically said all options are on the table. So I'm not exactly sure. It seems to be like some mismessaging about troops on the ground in Gaza. But nevertheless, if you think about, Daniel, I don't know, maybe you totally disagree with this, but I think we have a fantastic track record of rebuilding countries. I mean, look what we've done in Iraq. We've done amazing work in Iraq. We've done amazing work in Afghanistan.
Libya is great.
Libya. Every country we tend to go into, we do amazing work rebuilding these countries. I mean, fool me once, right? I mean, how you're really going to go into Gaza and rebuild it? It's going to be the most spectacular thing we've ever seen. As someone in the chat just said, no, this is a dumb idea. It's not make Gaza great again. It's make America great again.
You scared me at first because I was thinking, okay, let me see Iraq. What am I missing? What did I miss? That I was a little bit worried at first, But this just really shows.
Haven't you been to Club Med, Iraq?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, hanging out in Tripoli. Yeah, I mean, this just shows the folly of foreign policy interventionism. The American public is forced to pay for the bombs. We paid for the bombs. We gave Israel the money. They bought the bombs. They dropped the bombs. They blew everything up. And now we got to come back and pay to fix the things that were done by the bombs. And in every instance that you discussed earlier, that's exactly what happens. So we're taxed twice. We're taxed to blow it up and we're taxed to fix it. And I think Americans are sick of that, and they're starting to sense that we're not getting anything out of these things. We wouldn't get anything out of Gaza as well. In fact, it's impossible. It won't work.
Yeah. Can I ask you, I mean, something that's striking me online over the past 48 hours since these comments were made, it seems like maybe this is a brilliant strategy to give neocons some cover that, it's not really about boots on the ground militarily. It's we're going to go in there and help. And neocons will swarm around that. And I see some support from people who were heretofore like pushing for military intervention. And now neocons are sort of aligning around this idea that, no, this is good because now we can go in there and rebuild it in our image. Am I wrong about that? Or is it just like a gut instinct feeling for cover for these neocons?
Well, Trump is a strange person. There's so much to admire about him. There are things that are frustrating about him. It's hard to understand what he's saying. This image of Netanyahu next to him by the fire. Well, Trump is saying that place is destroyed. The people have been hurt and killed. Everything is ruined. And here's, Bibi sitting there, because it's obvious. This is the guy who did it right next to me. This is the guy who did it,
Right.
And so you may be absolutely right. He may be saying, okay, neocons, you want to go in there? You want another war? Okay, here you go. Go for it. That could be what he means.
Here's another sort of backdoor idea that I had of like, maybe we're being sold this because Saudi Arabia is an ally as well of the United States, or at least we carefully call them that. And they have said no to this plan without an independent Palestinian state and East Jerusalem as its capital. So is there a way that maybe this Muslim community would accept it if it came from Saudi Arabia as the investors? And then, Israel may not go for it, but I don't know. Like, I'm just trying to look at this from some allies from some angles that it would work, because we have this comment in the chat saying
from Patrick
saying what we've been trying to do isn't working. We cannot force these two to stop doing what they're doing. And so I don't know. Is that crazy?
Let me read Patrick's comment to you directly. Patrick Breck, thank you for your comment. He says, I like the Gaza plan because it shows something different. Otherwise, are we going to continue what hasn't been working? So what do you make of Patrick's question there, Natalie's?
I agree that we shouldn't continue what's not been working, but that thing that we shouldn't continue that's not been working is to continue to be the arms dealer for the Middle East, to continue to provide weapons. There's a concept in economics called moral hazard, where if you promise to backstop someone, no matter what they do, they start becoming more and more reckless, And I honestly think that Israel is in a much worse situation now by picking a fight with all of its neighbors. And by what's happened to Gaza, the rest of the world is really mobilized against Israel. So they've actually painted themselves in a corner because they've always believed that Uncle Sam will have their back. It's kept them from trying to find some sort of a deal that works there. So it really is our presence in the middle of it that is the problem. So yes, your correspondent is correct, but in ways perhaps differently than he means to be.
Yeah, and Patrick is one of our viewers in our chat room right now. So just to, a lot of people saying they love this idea. Other people say, no, absolutely not. No MAGA in Gaza. So sort of mixed reactions here, I think, overall. But Daniel, get you out of here on this question, which is, what about the oil and gas? There's no discussion about the oil and gas, but isn't it what's beneath the surface, the hundreds of billions of dollars of minerals and resources that have been sitting there that the Palestinians really haven't been able to access because BP isn't going to do business with them, because Israel just get on the phone, do not work with the Palestinians to allow them to tap into this oil, and ExxonMobil do not work with the Palestinians. So this massive amount of riches sitting there, what's going to happen to that?
This is very Trumpian, I think. He tends to shoot from the hip when it comes to this. Ukraine, we got to get that rare earth. China, China, we got to do this. This is sort of, I think, how he makes his deals. Unfortunately, in a situation like this, is slightly ill-informed, and it won't work out the way that he thinks it was. And one of the basic reasons is, think about this. What if it was our city? What if it was our family? What if it was our area? People don't want to just be forced out of where they live, even if it is a dump, like Trump pointed out. It's just human nature.
Daniel McAdams, we appreciate you joining us. Where can people find your work and the work that you do with one of our heroes, Ron Paul?
Well, thanks very much. We're at ronpaulinstitute.org. Dr. Paul and I do the Ron Paul Liberty Report every Monday through Friday at noon, live on Rumble, and we're also on, of course, X and YouTube.
Daniel, great to see you. Love your show. Love what you guys do. I mean, very few voices of truth out there, and you and Congressman Paul do such amazing work. So thank you, Daniel. Great to see you.
Thank you.
All right, we've got more news to come up here on this. What is it today? Thursday?
Today's Thursday. We're going to talk about how USAID has paid for child trafficking operations abroad. We knew this, and now we know it. And again, we're going to let Ryan
we double
Matta,
know it.
Yeah, we're going to let Ryan Matta take a victory lap on this. I was saying to Mike Benz on X that if victory laps were a real thing, he would have run an ultramarathon by now.
Yeah, for sure.
That guy.
Like David Goggins. So yeah, Ryan Matta will be joining us in a second. And the Attorney General of South Carolina, Alan Wilson, is going to be joining us because he's a national hero right now. I'm going to tell you what Alan is doing and what we can expect as investigations are about to unfold at the state level from attorneys general across the United States against Dr. Fauci. You thought that Biden pardon was going to get him off scot-free? No. We're going to have Alan Wilson here from the great state of South Carolina in just a few moments. But first, we're all about investing in precious minerals, and it's so important right now for you to think about your family's future. I don't care if maybe you have a few $100s in savings right now and you're thinking about, okay, the U.S. dollar. What's going to happen with the U.S. dollar? Think about the fluctuations that we see in the market right now. Think about having your family's future tied to a U.S. dollar and the ups and downs of that U.S. dollar with inflation and what the Biden administration has left us. The value of a U.S. dollar has plummeted. That's why we're big proponents of investing in precious minerals like gold and silver, and doing it from an American company that can ship gold and silver right to your front door. You can store it in your gun safe if you like. You can store it in an offsite facility. I would encourage you to give our friends over at Lear Capital a call. Just write this number down, and when you or your spouse are home together, give them a call. They're an American company, and they will walk you through the process, and they're an education company first, where they'll teach you about how you can move over an old 401k or a self-directed IRA into a gold and silver backed IRA that you can invest in anything you want. You want to invest in real estate, invest in gold and silver, anything you want, and Wall Street doesn't get their hands in it. It's beautiful. So just give them a call today, 1-800-613-3557. Ask for your free guide on how to invest, or go to LearRedacted.com, and you can receive up to $15,000 in free bonus medals with a qualified purchase. Anyway, go to LearRedacted.com, or just give their 800 number a call and tell them we sent you, 1-800-613-3557, to get your free guide right now. Well, would it shock you to learn that the United States government has been sending millions of dollars to Guatemala? Yes, upwards of $800 million to Guatemala via a laundry list of NGOs and organizations like USAID, and turn Guatemala into the child kidnapping capital of the world. Yes, our tax dollars, your tax dollars, funneled through USAID has led to over 190,000 Guatemalan children being kidnapped from Guatemala and then trafficked into the United States. And the horrors that unfold after that. What happens to these children? Are they killed? Are they disappeared? Sexually abused and thrown away like garbage? Our next guest wanted to break this story right here on Redacted. He has the receipts. He was just in Guatemala. He's just left Guatemala. He's in El Salvador now. He's safe and sound, thankfully. Please welcome independent journalist Ryan Matta to the show. Ryan, great to see you. I mean, sort of following what was unfolding while you were in Guatemala and getting these receipts, and it's an unbelievable story. Can you just paint a 30,000-foot level view of this for our audience? What have you uncovered?
Yeah, Clayton. So you've had me on your show several times to talk about my documentaries, which expose the world's largest child trafficking network that's being ran by our government. So out of the last 4 years, there has been 452,121 migrant children have been trafficked from 180 different nations all around the world into America, where our government takes possession of these children and is now openly admitted to losing 350,000 of them. So after my last documentary released, I was contacted by the Attorney General of Guatemala, and she asked if I could come to Guatemala to sit down with her team and talk about the amount of children that are being kidnapped out of Guatemala. So I started digging into that, found out that 42 to 48% of those children have came from Guatemala alone. That means out of the last 4 years, 190,052 children have been kidnapped out of Guatemala, trafficked into America, and processed into this child trafficking network migratorily by our government. To put that into context, the population size of Guatemala is 15 million. Their child population is 7 million. So over 3% of their entire child population has been kidnapped and trafficked out of Guatemala into America. And they've done so through this network of NGOs that are all being funded by USAID.
So USAID, of course, is now being closed, shut down under Doge, under Trump. Democrats are freaking out about it. They're trying to bring articles of impeachment against Trump. They're calling for Elon Musk's head. But what at the heart of USAID is an absolutely demonic, almost I would say satanic organization that has been involved in this. Now, you've got the receipts. So let's talk about what you've uncovered from the documents here and what you've seen during your time there in Guatemala.
So Clayton, when I got contacted by the Attorney General, right, I hired a private investigator firm to track every penny that our government has sent to Guatemala over the last 4 years. So that number that you stated, we're right in the open, $797 million has basically been taken out of our taxpayer money and shipped into Guatemala, unaccounted for. There's no oversight over this money. And then he did me a favor. He went back all the way back to 2012. Guess what? $4 billion, over $4 billion has been funneled into Guatemala since 2012. And I have the receipts for that. So because my name has gotten pretty big in Guatemala, and they know they can't trust their government, they can't trust their news, it's all being ran by USAID, the government's rotted to the core. The only one good in that government is the Attorney General's office. I had a whistleblower come forward and handed me a thumb drive. And on that thumb drive is offshore bank accounts of Ambassador Todd Robinson, a previous Attorney General, Thelma Aldana. So Thelma Aldana is now a fugitive in Guatemala. She's on the run. She's being protected by our State Department. She's getting awards by Anthony Blinken. And I have her offshore bank accounts. A woman that was making $40,000 to $50,000 a year has offshore bank accounts, not just one, multiple, with millions of dollars in them, Clayton, millions of dollars. Yeah, Todd Robinson, the previous ambassador to Guatemala, who was the ambassador to Guatemala from 2014 to 2017, has offshore bank accounts with millions of dollars in them. And there was transactions taking place in those offshore accounts when he was the ambassador. And then he was promoted by Anthony Blinken to like the top narcotics cop of the world.
So do we know where this money directly came from? Have you been able to track where it came from? Were these payments coming through these NGOs funneled from USAID?
Not yet. That's why I'm coming here to break this story, because we need somebody like Kash Patel. We need somebody like Pam Bondi, somebody that has access to get that information that I don't have access to. I just got lucky to get this thumb drive, and I promised them that I would put it out here and give it to the world. And that's what I'm doing. That's why I'm on your show. It's not my information. We need people at the highest level to investigate these criminals. And I got one more for you, Clayton.
Oh, yeah, please.
So in this list is a declassified internal document from within Guatemala, and it looks like it would be the equivalent, I believe, of like our Secret Service or our CIA. Somebody at the highest level ordered this investigation. And this is what the previous president, Jimmy Morales, in 2017 was calling for an investigation into Todd Robinson, because allegedly Todd Robinson was raping little boys over here in Guatemala. So I get this document that was this investigation done into Todd Robinson in 2017. And I had it translated into English. And it basically states that Todd Robinson is, number one, a raging alcoholic. He's gay. He has 2 gay lovers. One of them works at the U.S. Embassy, and one was a Guatemalan national. This man would get drunk. There wasn't a meeting or anything that happened that Todd Robinson did that didn't involve drinks. He was a huge raging alcoholic, and he would throw these Diddy-style freak-off parties at his private palace in Guatemala, where he was having the cartels deliver little boys to his property. And there's allegedly that a 13-year-old boy was raped at one of these parties, and the mother filed a police report and an investigation into him. And he used his powers inside the Guatemalan police departments to destroy that evidence. And that's what Jimmy Morales was calling for, for an investigation into Todd Robinson. And that's why our government, our State Department, was hell-bent on overthrowing Jimmy Morales. If you go back to 2017, there was a coup attempt. And that coup attempt came a couple months after Jimmy Morales called for the investigation. And then at one of his freak-off parties, he gets so drunk that he goes and takes a gun from a security guard, starts shooting the gun into the air. The security guard tries to get his gun back. A scuffle breaks out. The security guard is shot in the leg. And nobody to this day has ever heard or spoke to that security guard again. And this is an internal document that I sent you this morning in an email from some office in Guatemala. And I've now given all this information to the Guatemalan authorities as well.
Who exactly is Todd Robinson, for our audience who's not familiar with him?
That is a great question. Todd Robinson graduated from Georgetown University in 1985, and then in 86 was immediately picked up by our State Department. And since then, he's gone from organization to organization to organization. These are job titles that I don't know. I've never even heard of these positions, but they're somehow in our government. And then it goes all the way up to his last position, when he was just removed from his previous position. Give me 2 seconds, and I'll pull that up here for you, and I'll tell you the exact title of that position. Wait for it. Okay, here it is. So he was just the Assistant Secretary of State for International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs. So he's the top international narcotics and law enforcement officer in the world. And we now have the worst drug epidemic ever in American history. And that's the guy who's responsible for it.
And his bank accounts reflect millions of dollars in payments, offshore bank accounts.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Has anyone in the Trump administration reached out to try to help with this at this point? Or, where do things stand? I know under the Biden administration, of course, they've tried to completely hide their connections to what has happened in Guatemala. Where do things stand now with the Trump administration?
I think what Trump's doing with USAID, I think there's a lot more to this story. I think we're going to find out in every single one of these Democrats that are going after and out there and trying to defend USAID right now. I think they're terrified that if Elon starts looking into the money and these organizations start getting audited, you're going to start to find a lot of these politicians, these unelected bureaucrats with offshore bank accounts. I couldn't figure it out. The Democrats, and when they're a politician, it made sense that USAID was funding NGOs, NGOs were donating to the political campaigns, and that money was coming back full circle. But the unelected bureaucrats, I couldn't ever figure it out. But now that I'm seeing all these offshore bank accounts, it's like, oh, okay, that money's going into an offshore bank account. That's how you're getting paid back.
What does the Guatemalan Attorney General's office hope will come of this by bringing this information to you, providing a thumb drive, these offshore accounts? What are they hoping that you'll be able to do in Guatemala?
I got this information, not from the Attorney General's, Clayton, from a confidential human source that brought it to me. I just delivered it to the Attorney General's office today. So they're just now receiving all of this information, allegedly, for the first time. I had sources that said that they've tried to get it to him before. Maybe it didn't make it to the right person, but now they 100% have it. And what they're looking for is they're looking for the cooperation. I was talking to him prior to this. They want the cooperation of the Trump administration. They want to work hand in hand with the Trump administration to completely eradicate corruption and hold every single corrupt government official inside Guatemala accountable, along with anybody from USAID or any American organizations that were working with the corrupt individuals. I interviewed a girl this weekend, Clayton, that could tell you how much money, within a few $100, how many quintillas can fit in a shoebox. I could pick up any bag in my room. She was the bag girl for these corrupt politicians in Guatemala, to the point where she could tell you exactly to like the thousandth of a dollar how much can fit in any bag, any container in a room. That's how much money she was passed around in cash for these guys.
What happened to these children?
These children are in America right now, and we need to find them. We need to get hands on them. Our government processed them migratorily. They put them into a system, and they've delivered them to unvetted, undocumented illegal immigrants all throughout our country. The worst things humanly possibly unimaginable are happening to these children right now. 100% fact that as we speak, in the time that we've been on this call, that 100% one of these migrant children is being raped as we speak. And our government vetted the adult that they gave that child to, Clayton.
Our government deeply involved in this. It's being run by Satanists. I mean, there's no other way to put it right now. And that's why Democrats are so upset about this being exposed. It's deeply, deeply troubling. Ryan, thank you for bringing this to us. Stay safe. We will be following this story. Anything we can do to try to help as this story unfolds, to try to push the Trump administration in any way we can. We've been, focused obviously with you on this child trafficking story from the beginning. So let us know what we can do. Okay.
God bless you, Clayton. Appreciate you, man. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Ryan. Well, one thing we can do is get the attention of attorneys general across the country and Pam Bondi. I sent a message to the new Attorney General, Pam, an old friend, and congratulated her. Of course, she's been super busy, but we really want this on her radar because these children have been trafficked into the United States and they're being housed across the United States. We've done multiple investigation reports here on the show, not only in Texas, through Minnesota, Wisconsin, all over the country. These children have been trafficked and at the hands of the Biden administration.
So, in the Biden administration readily admitted this. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, they did. What were you going to say?
I think Philip's trying to say something.
Oh, go ahead, Philip. I didn't hear Philip.
Well, no, I wasn't trying to say anything. No,
okay.
I didn't hear me either.
You didn't hear you
sorry.
either. All right. Well, we've got more news to get to here. Speaking of attorneys general, one attorney general has taken the bold and brave move, the South Carolina Attorney General, Alan Wilson, to go after Dr. Fauci. You thought that Biden pardon was enough to protect Dr. Fauci? Well, yeah, maybe at the federal level, not at the state level. What crimes did Fauci commit? We're going to talk to the Attorney General of South Carolina, Alan Wilson, in just a second. But first, we want to remind you about our friends over at American Financing because, hey, if you are carrying really high debt, either on a credit card or another debt vehicle, then you might want to learn to leverage your home equity in order to get yourself out of debt. This is something that wealthy people learn, which is leveraging their assets and not living on high interest bad debt in order to build wealth. Well, you can't build if you're buried under high interest debt. And this is something that American Financing can teach you. You can get that monkey off your back. They can, if you call them, take a look at your finances and see if this is a strategy that would work with your family. And if it does, they can save you not only $800 a month on average, but also 1 or 2 interest payments so that you can give yourself a little bit of breathing room. All it takes is a 10-minute, no cost, no obligation phone call to find out how much you can save. So visit them at americanfinancing.net/redacted or call them at 1-866-890-8434. One more time, you're just going to learn this. This is a financial product that could or could not work for your family if you give it your full attention. So again, just visit them at americanfinancing.net/redacted. Well, that midnight Biden pardon of Dr. Anthony Fauci might not save him after all. As you know, a federal pardon won't save you when states find fraud and other crimes, and that's exactly what's being investigated now. South Carolina Attorney General Alan Wilson is leading a coalition of states' attorneys general across the country to investigate Dr. Fauci's role in the COVID-19 pandemic and any state laws that he may or may not have broken in all of this. And of course, new revelations coming out with USAID and the involvement of funding, research in Wuhan, basically the creation of COVID-19. And we want to welcome in South Carolina Attorney General Alan Wilson, who joins us now. Great to see you, sir. Welcome to the show.
It is great to be with you. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. And I just want to go through the list here. You've got an incredible list of great attorneys general on this list across the country. I mean, people like Ken Paxton of Texas. You've got Todd Rokita of the state of Indiana.
Andrew Bailey from Missouri, which is leading the charge against the Biden administration for censorship around the COVID pandemic. So you have people who are familiar with the Biden era I want to say communism that we experienced. So can you tell us about how you assembled this team and why are there no Democratic-led states who are interested in what Fauci did to them?
Well, first off, let me just thank all of my colleagues, the 16 other AGs who joined. I know other AGs are looking into it with their own state resources. But you look at the bench of talent we have. You mentioned Todd Rokita and Ken Paxton and others. And then you look in the U.S. Senate. Just 2 weeks ago, my dear friend Ashley Moody became a United States Senator in the state of Florida. You have Josh Hawley and Eric Schmidt from the state of Missouri. These are people that are leading the charge to try to provide oversight in the U.S. Senate. Derek Schmidt, who's now elected to Congress, a former AG in Kansas. And of course, as one of you just mentioned, our very dear friend Pam Bondi, who I worked with for 8 wonderful years, and I couldn't be happier and more pleased that she is where she is right now. Donald Trump could have not have picked a better attorney general. There's not any Democrats on there because Democrat AGs are obviously not going to want to get answers. They're not going to want to get to the bottom of this, obviously. But this is something I felt really compelled to do. When I heard about the midnight pardons, the last-minute pardons that Biden put out there, I said, wait a second, this is not right, this is wrong, and that's why I'm grateful for the members of Congress who have continued to pursue oversight. We obviously have a select committee final report that led me to want to lead this letter and bring AGs together to bring state resources and law enforcement to bear when the federal government is prohibited because of the things because of the pardons that Biden put out at the last minute. So I'm incredibly grateful for the states taking a leadership role in this endeavor.
So I know you can't speak to other states specifically, like Indiana. We talked about Todd Rokita or Ken Paxton, state of Texas. So just on South Carolina's side, what you're handling here, what crimes are you looking at for Dr. Fauci?
Well, here's the thing. We don't know yet what we don't know, because I'm asking our friends in Congress, our friends at the NIH, I call them friends now because we have people that are going to be put in positions of authority that will be more open and transparent. We want to, the select committee's report was basically a report of oversight done on an administration that was hostile to transparency and what was done by Dr. Fauci and others like him, those malign actors as we described in the letter. So what we want is we want a full accounting, a full report that brings full transparency so that the states can then receive that report, evaluate that report, and make a determination if there are civil and or any criminal charges that the states could bring. Again, this is not a witch hunt. I am offering the services of state of South Carolina and, of course, 16 other AGs offering the services of their respective states to the federal government so that if there is a reasonable and actionable criminal law or civil law that has been broken, then maybe the states can bring that accountability in state courts where the feds would not be able to bring it in federal courts. So, again, we don't know yet what, if any, crimes have been committed. I certainly believe there has been potential fraud. There's certainly been abuse of power by those who led the response to the COVID-19 pandemic. But I want a full reckoning, a full accountability, and I want to be able to tell our friends in Congress that we are here to support you if you provide us the information we need.
Well, I know that various states have various laws about how fraud is defined, what supporting roles can be prosecuted for fraud. We know that Dr. Fauci was not the only one who worked to discredit the lab leak theory, which could have led Americans down a very different path during the pandemic. And I think that's fraud. I don't know if the law defines it as such. I know that there are other people that did that. Dr. Jeremy Farrar comes to mind. And so I guess what I'm asking is, what are the laws in South Carolina that would allow that to constitute fraud? And is there maybe a neighbor state that has a different definition that would, in fact, I don't want to use the word catch him, but I know what he did.
Oh, so, I would like to. I'm not afraid.
Do you know what I'm trying to ask here? I'm not saying I want you to catch him, but is there a law that would allow you to?
Please catch him.
Well, here's the thing. We're asking the questions that will allow me to answer that question at a point in the future. Like right now, I don't know what I don't know, and neither do my colleagues around the country. But there are 17 states and possibly more who are willing to allow the federal government, the U.S. Congress, the Trump administration to use the states as a vehicle for holding certain bad actors and malign actors accountable for their COVID-19 response and obviously the dishonesty that many of them did during that period of time. Again, I don't want to get out in front of my skis. I don't want to raise expectations, but the letter was intended to send a message to the Trump administration, to the Republican-controlled Congress, that if you have reports or information or evidence that the states can use in a potential case against malign actors, then give it to us and we will act accordingly.
A separate story here, Mr. Attorney General, and, I thank you for being on to talk about Dr. Fauci. We just had a story a few minutes ago here on the show. We've been following very closely the child sex trafficking story, and under the Biden administration, allowing hundreds of thousands of children to be trafficked into the United States at the hands of the Biden administration, largely and through these NGOs. What can states' attorneys general do to stop this, uncover this, and try to rescue these children? What are you guys doing in South Carolina?
Well, first off, I'm as disgusted by the report that came out last summer by the Department of Homeland Security's Office of the Inspector General, where there were over 320,000 unaccompanied minors who came into the interior of the United States from the Mexican border, and they cannot locate them. They do not know where they are or what has happened to them. And what I learned when I visited the border last summer from Texas state officials, not federal officials at the time, because they were not allowed to talk freely with us, but Texas officials said that the incentives produced by Biden-era policies incentivize people to traffic children because obviously the gangbangers, MS-13, Tren de Aragua, cartel members, males traveling alone stood out like a sore thumb. Males traveling in a family did not stick out, and so they would take children, and they used to do buccal swabs that would identify if the DNA of the child belonged to the parent or the adult they were traveling with. I was told that nearly 75% before they quit doing those DNA tests, 75% were not related to the adult they were traveling with. They quit doing the DNA test. That number could be higher. So these kids were being used to basically to subvert and be covert to hide the tracks of cartel and gang members. So that's the first incentive. The second incentive is the more kids you had with you, the more money you got when they took you to the NGO. $2,000 a head. And so these kids, many were probably used over and over and over to be like propped. And others were probably being smuggled for human trafficking purposes. Now, to your question, South Carolina has a very robust state human trafficking task force, 1,500 strong. We have strong relationships with local, state, and federal law enforcement officials in our state. Obviously, we are communicating with children advocacy centers, local law enforcement, state law enforcement officials. We intend to engage heavily with ICE. We're going to get more sheriffs and law enforcement engaged in the 287G program, which basically deputizes local law enforcement to help ICE in their recovery efforts in deporting illegal aliens. But in the process of deporting violent criminal illegal aliens, we could also be looking for children who could be victims of human trafficking from those Biden-era policies. So those are the things that we intend to be doing as we start to foment those relationships with the new ICE leadership.
We didn't hear much about South Carolina and the migrant crisis as one of the states that was put upon by the Biden administration. So we saw that one of your colleagues, Liz Murrill, who is also on the Fauci letter that you published, she sued the Biden administration for sending so many migrants to Louisiana. Is that something that you had to do? Is this something you had to clean up?
No, I didn't have it as bad as some other states. I mean, Liz Murrill and her predecessor, now Governor Jeff Landry, both dear friends of mine, were leaders in this front, and as were other AGs. We did not have those issues, but what we did have is we had an uptick in a lot of the cartel-related drug activity. I learned, we obviously have a very robust state grand jury that does drug trafficking operations. Last January, we seized enough fentanyl from a drug trafficking operation that included 64 indicted defendants. 6 we indicted for murder because they were purposefully lacing fentanyl with opioid pills that were intentionally killing people, and they have been indicted. But we brought those 300-plus charges against 64 defendants. We seized enough fentanyl that I am told by the DEA was enough to kill 500,000 citizens in our state. So obviously, there are a lot of illegal migrants here. There are some who are here because they want a better life. They're still here illegally. And there's some who are here because they're violent criminals and are trying to exploit, the benefits of living in South Carolina like other states. And they're bringing in meth, cocaine, fentanyl, heroin, crack, guns. And they're all coming up from the southern border. They're all coming up through Atlanta and through the I-85 and I-20 corridor and up and down the I-95 corridor. So the drug trafficking problem in South Carolina has been exacerbated by the border crisis that we've had over the last 4 years.
Well, we want to thank you, South Carolina Attorney General Alan Wilson, for the work that you're doing. Frankly, we need more attorneys general like you, and I'm glad the list of American heroes that you have on that list, looking into Dr. Fauci and trying to stop the scourge of child trafficking in your states. Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank y'all for reporting this. We appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll follow it.
Thank you, sir.
Continue to follow it, so please come back.
Alan Wilson. All right. Thank you, guys. And yeah, so many people in our chat room just so fed up with the child trafficking that, people in Washington are just ignoring the story. And how sick would you have to be to ignore this story? How much money would you have to be paid in order to ignore the story and facilitate this, this sort of Satanist cabal that's leading this? It's disgusting.
The Attorney General is an elected official. He answers to his constituents to solve these problems. So if you want to be elected, you have to go after these things. So it's so interesting how the Democrats he mentioned who have not joined these lawsuits are not interested in the lives of Dr. Fauci or the trafficked children. Not interested, and they continue to get elected. So who's voting for AGs like that, Clayton? Who?
I don't know. It's amazing to me because as you pointed out in your interview with Nancy Mace earlier, I mean, back when Barack Obama was then running, he set up a website, a social media website that was all about government transparency. Like, where did those Democrats go? They don't care at all about government transparency. Like, if you know that children are being trafficked, I've had debates with liberals who voted for Kamala Harris. I'm like, you're literally supporting the trafficking of children. This administration facilitated the importation, distribution, sex trafficking of children. How can you get up in the middle of the morning? How can you wake up in the morning and feel confident about you voted for these people? It's disgusting.
Well, and another thing that really irritates me is you see this narrative of like, oh my gosh, Elon Musk has access to our personal information. Think of all the people that you don't even know that have that, like
right.
in these offices.
Oh, the NSA. Yeah. I mean, all of it being shared around and spied on Americans right now. So, yeah, disgusting. Well, hey, we should mention we have a store. I'll mention it again. Check it out. If you want to go to redactedstore.com and support independent journalism, you can do that and grab some of our t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, and stickers. We are supported by you and the few sponsors we have here on the show. We are not supported by USAID. We're not supported by Israel. We're not supported by defense contractors.
No.
No, they don't like us. So we are supported by you.
We're not supported by Big Pharma, by Big Censorship, by Big Bird.
By Big Bird.
We're not supported
I would
by
like to
any
be
of those.
supported by Big Bird. I hope we are.
Well, no, because that's a PBS product that's supported by USAID. So we cannot take money from Big Bird or Oscar the Grouch or Bruno the Trash
They've ruined everything. They've just ruined everything, haven't they? There's Grover, my dog, doing a little zoomy over there. So that's going to do it for us this week, everyone. Thank you guys so much. Go Birds. Hope you guys enjoy your weekend. We'll be back on Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern time. We'll have content for you throughout the weekend as well as we watch all of these executive orders and moves. There's really no day off for us around here. We're constantly going back and forth what's happening right now. So thank you guys so much for subscribing to the show. It's totally free and being a part of our community. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'll say goodbye. Goodbye, Ben.
Bye, everyone.